Hello there, this is AD Robles, and you're listening to AD on the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network. Children, don't stop dancing. Believe you can fly. I don't know, but somebody in the comments last week said that I should stop dancing. They said, "Stop dancing, AD," just like that. And I said, no way. I will not stop dancing because Creed told me not to. That's a Creed song. Yeah, I used to like Creed back in the day. I know a lot of you guys have lost some respect for me when I admit that, but it's true. I used to like Creed. In fact, I was part of a rock band that used to cover Creed songs every now and then. Some good Creed songs out there. But anyway, let's jump right into it today. But before we do, let me just say this. If you have not considered doing so, please consider becoming a Fight, Laugh, Feast Network club member. Use the show code Robles. That is ROBLES. Use the show code Robles. That is ROBLES to become a Fight, Laugh, Feast Network club member, to support the content that you love, to get some free goodies and all that kind of stuff. And most importantly, lets the boys know that you appreciate this content in particular. Show code Robles, ROBLES. Now let's get to it today. It's been kind of a brutal week again. Whew. Business, man. It's been killing me lately. A lot of you guys have been asking just to make sure I'm okay. I'm definitely okay. But what's happening here is I'm in like an epic losing streak over the last few weeks. But the good news is that it came after an epic winning streak. So it's all kind of evened out, even Stevens kind of thing. And that tends to happen in my business. So it's nothing out of the ordinary, but it just stinks to lose again and again and again and again and again. But hopefully there's some good things coming. Thank you to all of you who have reached out to find out if I'm okay. Thank you, my brother Brandon, who lives in town here. We didn't know each other before, but he lives in my town, and we've gotten to know each other a little bit. I appreciate the encouragement and the Bible verses and the prayers, all that kind of stuff, guys. I really appreciate it. I wanted to start off with a Bible verse of my own today. And I've been thinking a lot about this verse lately, and then yesterday I saw some posts on Gab that made me think about it again, and I'll explain what I mean. Now, I'm going to read from the Authorized Version. This is Proverbs 12:19. Proverbs 12:19. This is what the Authorized Version says. The lip of truth shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. That's a good verse, man. I'm going to read from the Christian Standard Bible for all of you who don't understand authorized English. Just kidding. Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue only for a moment. I love this verse so much because it's a reminder that when you're living in a kingdom of lies, where up is down, down is up, left is right, east is west, it's just the amount of lies that we are inundated with it and bombarded by every single day, it's just, there's so much, right? There's so much. One thing that we need to keep in mind is that people who live by lies, they might get by better and easier in the short term, but in the long run, that's a recipe for disaster. Only the truth endures. And let me tell you the context I was thinking about this in. I was thinking about the stock market. And this is the kinds of things I think about because I think the stock market and the economy and all these kinds of things that we engage in every day, a lot of people kind of think of these things as like dirty things and all of that, but they're not dirty things. These are spiritual in a sense. And what I mean by that is that there's a truth and a lie in the stock market and the economy as well. And there's a truth and a lie when it comes to money and means of exchange and stuff like that as well. And you need to be aware of it so that you can understand and do the things that will endure. Because we don't want to just, you don't want to bet the farm on short-term gains based on lies, right? What you want to do, though, is you want to build a life, and this includes your money. It's not exclusively money, but it includes your money. Things that will endure. You want to build on truth, right? You want to build on true things. And right now, I was talking to Matt Williams the other day on our Reformgelical show, and he kind of joked that he had given up talking about business. Now he really hasn't, but he's what he's lamenting is essentially the idea that like things are so insane right now. Like and from my perspective, I don't want to put words in his mouth. The stock market is totally disconnected from reality. There's just no way that you can look at what's going on in the stock market where apparently the economy's great. But then you look at reality and it's like, yeah, but like we're giving out these like these stimulus checks and people are on permanent unemployment and last year there was more unemployment than in the Great Depression for some times and things like that, and inflation's going through the roof. The money machine is just printing. It's like disconnected from reality. Like normally you would think if the stock market's going well, the economy's going well. That's really not the case for us. We're still spending as if our economy's going well, but it isn't. You know what I mean? But it isn't going well. But somehow, because we have this machine that prints money, everyone can still spend as if it is, and it's like, well, it's almost like we've so many of us have believed this lie, especially investors have believed this lie that we can just magically get out of this problem, right? Like you print the money and you're out. You could have whatever you want. Last night on Reform Jellicle, Matt Williams was saying he wonders if the Federal Reserve was just a liberal scam all along. I think definitely it was. It's a way to pay for all of your schemes, all of your plans, all of what you want to do to get elected without having to extract the money from people. Because if you start to taxing people through the roof, they're going to start to get mad. So instead of doing that, you just print the money. There you go. And so we've got this economy where people are like, oh yeah, when the economy opens back up, I think it's going to be gangbusters. There's all this pent up demand for all this stuff. There's no pent up demand. I was listening to one guy who was criticizing this whole idea of pent up demand and stuff like that. And the way he described it is like, yeah, I haven't been to a restaurant with my wife in a year. But when the economy opens up, I'm just going to get one dinner when I go to the restaurant. Like, I'm not going to buy 10 dinners. There's no pent up demand. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to do what I normally do. I'm going to buy one dinner. I'm going to go to the restaurant once a week or whatever it is. This guy was a rich guy, so he went to the restaurant often. But I agree with that. It's like some of these industries are never, ever coming back. Some of the restaurants that close down are going to go into other fields and stuff like that. And that's good. I'm glad they're going into other fields. That means that they'll be doing some other kind of productive work. But I think that there's this mistaken notion that the stock market is operating on right now, where it's like, well, don't we have to worry about inflation? And once the economy opens back up, we're just going to be back to normal like that. And that's just not the case. That's not the case at all. In fact, there's going to be a conflict coming with other countries, and in China in particular, who makes all of our stuff that we buy. Eventually, they're going to stop wanting dollars. You know what I mean? There's too many of them out there. And so it's just a real weird situation. And so my whole point for talking about this, I'm sorry to bore you to tears if you don't care about this stuff, but when you look at the stock market and where to invest, you want to build something that will endure. Right? You want to build something, whether it's a nest egg or an inheritance or whatever it is, something that'll endure. You don't want to live by lies as if they're never going to come crashing down, because they definitely will come crashing down. We've got that in the scripture. It's an ironclad promise. The truthful lip shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. This applies to everything. This applies to everything, not just the economy. I was watching a video. Man, this one was hard to watch. Now, the person that I was watching, it was a person who had transitioned from female to male, or at least pretended to, and then regretted it and went back to female. And it was like recorded like a couple days after she had gone back to being what she originally was. Now, I'm using that terminology, but it's actually not true. She's just gone back to being who she really was, essentially is what it is. And she didn't really like she wasn't like thinking in terms of from a Christian perspective, but she definitely did regret what she had done. And it is so sad because, she pretty much looked like a girl, but because of the hormones that she took, her voice was deeper than mine. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing. So it's like, just listening to her talk about why she transitioned, or attempted and pretended to, and then why she decided to not do that anymore, how she easily got these hormones from Planned Parenthood, that evil pagan organization. She was saying, like, this is no Christian, by the way, no Christian. She's like, it should not be that easy for someone to get hormones. Just go to Planned Parenthood and sign up for them, kind of thing. Anyway, but the thing is, like, she was attempting to live by a lie, and it didn't last. And the euphoria she got from doing it for initially, because she thought it was going to be the right move for her, it really quickly wore off. And you find this a lot with people in that kind of a lifestyle, that the euphoria that they get for indulging in their sin, it doesn't last. It doesn't last. If you're a Christian, you know this from your own fight and battle against besetting sins. The enjoyment that you get from those besetting sins, it doesn't last. It's like any story you've ever heard of someone doing drugs or whatever. I know that I've told you guys that I used to indulge in drugs myself, and I was lucky because I was always scared to buy drugs. Like, I was just too wimpy to buy drugs. That God used that wimpiness to my advantage, because if I didn't care about that, I probably would not be here today, because I would have just bought drugs until I died. Anyway, one of my favorites was cocaine, and I used to do cocaine a lot with my buddies. But it's just one of those things that's just short-lived, and then you feel like garbage. You know what I mean? It's like, you get that quick euphoria, but it doesn't last. It's not real. It's fake. It's fantasy land. It's not correct. It's not true that you actually are that way. So you feel like you're a king. You feel like you're on top of the world. But it's a lie, and it only lasts but for a moment. See, this applies to everything. I saw this on Gab from Matt Williams. He's talking about economics again here, and this is don't be bored by this, because this is part of being a Christian, and to engage in economics the way a Christian ought to engage in economics. We ought to think about that. This is a big part of your life as a human being. Economics is nothing but the aggregate activities of human beings, trading and selling and interacting with each other. Economics is part of how we need to live our lives. It's just that simple. He says this. He says he compares capitalism, which is just people freely buying and selling. That's what really capitalism is. But then we've got this fascist sort of crony capitalism, and it's where businesses do stuff, essentially for the government that the government doesn't want to do themselves because of politics. And so the Fed, the government, manipulates the cost of money to fund big government. It's a big manipulation. You need to understand that that's if you're living by this Fed manipulation, if that's how you're making your income and that's how you live, that's how you're building, you better be careful, because that lie is but for a moment. Here's Facebook and Twitter shutting down free speech so that the government doesn't violate the First Amendment. If your perspectives, and I'm talking to social justice warriors, the woke church, your perspectives need to be propped up by algorithms and by censorship and things like that. If you need that in order to survive, you're living by a lie. That's going to go away like that, because reality always beats over these fantasy ideologies in this fantasy land that you live in. So I would suggest, reconsidering that. Here's another one, example 3. He says, banks are shutting down business with entities, are shutting down businesses so that governments don't get blamed. Yeah, this is happening to Gab. Like, nobody will let Gab bank with them, and it's not like the Gab is like looking for like money to loan me money and stuff like that. They're just looking for a checking account, and they can't find one even by so-called Christian banks. They won't give them a checking account. Why? Well, there's a lot of theories as to why, but the reality is that they're living by this fantasy, this lie that somehow what Gab is attempting to do, where you have kind of a free exchange of ideas, is actually evil and anti-Semitic and pagan and stuff like that, and they're living by this lie. That's not going to last, though, guys, because, see, Gab is inevitable. Gab, I agree with Torba. Gab, and I don't mean Gab exactly, but the idea of Gab, it's inevitable. People are going to find a place where they can actually kick around ideas that are forbidden in the real world kind of thing. And I say real world, it's not real. People talk about this stuff all the time, but everyone pretends like, if you talk about something that's forbidden, though, you must be an anti-Semite, I guess. That's fantasy. That lie is going to last but for a moment. The truth will endure. people are talking still about the election fraud, and it's just really crazy. I was talking to my brother yesterday about the fact that the election was stolen. There's really no doubt in anybody's mind that it was stolen, but it still was stolen. And I remember on election night, I said, like, you knew that the Democrats were going to cheat, obviously, but you still have to win, right? Like, you still have to win the game, so you need to take that into account. But the truth is, though, that a lot of people are just kind of ignoring some of this stuff and pretending like it's not real. And so they're living by lies, right? And so you need to live in reality, because if you live by lies, that's not going to last. Reality always wins out in the end. I mean, you can't live by lies forever. The Bible has guaranteed that is true. It's the truth that endures. Reality endures, not the lies. And so I'm not a financial advisor, but there are opportunities to be had from a world that's living in fantasy land in all kinds of different ways. When it comes to gender, when it comes to every single woke issue is complete fantasy. And even the stock market, there's a lot of fantasy there, right? Because here's the truth. As a Christian, we need to understand that the opportunities that present themselves in the financial markets, right? So these companies are tremendously, if you believe these companies are overvalued, there's a stock market crash coming, there's inflation coming, whatever it is you believe. I'm not telling you what to believe, but if you think that there's a correction coming, which I think is highly likely, given the indicators that we're seeing, then prepare for the opportunity that presents itself there. There's nothing in the Bible that says you can't take advantage of a situation like this, because there is some truth in the stock market. So just because a company is valued, 10x what it should be, or 2x or 3x or 5x what it should be right now, I would suggest being very careful getting involved in some of that shenanigans, right? I'm not saying you can't, but I'm saying I'd suggest that, thinking long term, you might want to be careful getting involved in some of that stuff, because when the truth comes when the lie comes crashing down and the truth wins out, because reality always wins out over the fantasy in the long run, there will be an opportunity there. So that company that's worth half of what the stock market says it's worth, when it comes crashing down, there's going to be a buying opportunity there for someone who's ready for it and understands, some of the foundations and some of the principles there. That company does still have value, and so you can swoop in and buy that company and then make a killing when it actually does produce and actually does have revenue and actually does have make a profit. A lot of people have become wealthy over the years doing exactly that. They don't get involved in the insanity. They don't get involved in the lie, but they know that there's a truth there. And then that company dips down and everyone's panicking, and you're not panicking because you've understood the truth the entire time. You weren't living by those lies. I mean, the stock market is living on a lot of lies right now. Don't do that, and then get the opportunity or take advantage of the opportunity that presents itself when it does. Because just because company XYZ is completely overvalued now doesn't mean that it doesn't have an actual value where you can actually make money owning that company. Or it doesn't even have to be a company. It can be a commodity. It can be something that has value in and of itself. There's just a ton of lies out there right now. And so the whole point of this is not to give you financial advice, but to give you advice as far as living life, right? When you see everyone around you living a lie, don't join them. Don't join them no matter how attractive it is. Maybe you can get a big gain in the short term, right? And there's nothing wrong with getting big gains in the short term, but you gotta be careful because you're playing with fire there, right? And some people can play with fire pretty effectively. I'm not saying there can't be money to be made there, but just know what you're doing because you need to leave that party before the cops come and bust it up. You see, reality always wins out over the fantasy in the long run. I don't really know if that's helpful to you or not, but just keep that in mind. Try to understand the principles and the foundations when you're making moves, no matter what you're doing. It could be financial moves or other moves, right? Just in life in general. The truth always wins out. Reality always wins the day. Anyway, I hope you found this podcast helpful. God bless. Don't forget to tune in next week on Thursday for AD on the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network. Another area I was thinking about this was, how people that are preppers often get made fun of, and it's like, it's just so amazing, like, because and of course you can go overboard with prepping, just like you can go overboard with everything, but people that are saying, okay, I want to like hedge, my bets for the future. Eventually there's going to come a time where it's going to be the grocery store is not going to have a certain item or whatever it is, and I just want to make sure that my family has it, or energy, or like a generator or something like that. And people laugh at you. They're like, what are you talking about? It's never happened before. But you see, reality is such, though, that that like emergencies don't happen every day, but when you have one, you need to be prepared for it. Like, why wouldn't you want to be prepared for a potential emergency? Again, you can go overboard with this, just like you can go overboard with anything. But that's the kind of thing where it's like, if you live in the fantasy where nothing, no emergency will ever happen, no run on canned goods will ever happen, well, you were disavowed of that fantasy just last year. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I went to the grocery store right when the pandemic hit, I had food reserves already because I'm not a prepper necessarily, but I do prepare for eventualities. But I went to the grocery store. I was like over in the fresh produce things and picking out some other goods and stuff like that. I went through the can aisle. Hardly anything was there. And so it's like everyone should be completely leaving that nonsense behind. But the reality is most people won't, because most people will continue to want to live in that fantasy world. Don't do it. The truth always wins out over fantasy. So eventually there will come a time when you will wish that you had prepared for so-and-so or this and that. You can't prepare for everything, but you can hedge your bets, and you can do an analysis of what you need to prepare for where you live. Anyway, that's just another thought I had. God bless.